Hello and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar with me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar. In this episode, I'm going to walk through how you can update the formatting of entities that are returned in filtered lookups within the new UI using a plugin. It's a custom plugin that I wrote. It's free, it's open source, it's out there. Feel free to go and look at it and use it. But I just want to show you kind of what it does. So basically, by default, when you go to filter on a field here, or filter by an entity, when you go to select this, by default it only gives you the full name. So if I happen to have two Wendy Thomases in my CDS database here, they will both show up and you won't be able to distinguish between the two. This happens a lot for lots of different even custom entities and stuff like that. But this example, I'm just doing a simple account contact sort of relationship here. So I've got two contacts, same name, and they actually both work for the same account, but then this last one is the actual home address. So one's Illinois, one's California, just to help distinguish between those two individuals. So this is basically just an example of how do you go through and use this tool and what does it actually provide you. So if I go ahead and turn that off real quick, the plugin, and actually look to see what happens. All right, that's been turned off. So now when I search for Wendy Thomas, I've got two, and I don't know the difference between it. So let's go ahead and dive into what is it, how do you do it, how do you create it, how do you add it to your environment, and go from there. So first stop is to make sure that you either have the Xroom Toolbox downloaded and are using the plugin registration tool in that. If you don't have that, xroomtoolbox.com, download that and download the plugin registration tool from the store. Other option is you could download it from the SDK from Microsoft directly. The easiest way to do that is to head over to cds.tools here from MVP David Yak. And it's got this Get the Tools here. You can click on the Get the SDK Tools here and download the SDK zip file, unblock it, so make sure you do that. Unblock it, unzip it, and in that you are going to the plugin registration tool and you can run it from there. So it just depends on how you're doing those things. So once you've got the plugin registration tool, either through the Xroom Toolbox, and I'll show you the Xroom Toolbox methodology here, either through that or through this little download here, or you can get it directly via PowerShell script here or npm here. There's all these options, or a manual download here. You can download the plugin registration tool here. So you just need the plugin registration tool to be able to register that plugin in your environment. Okay. So once you've got the tool downloaded, you want to go to github.com/daryllebar/filter-plugin/releases. If you don't remember that, it should just be Daryl Lebar filter plugin. That should probably find where you need to. Let's see. Yeah, well, that gets me to my GitHub repositories. There we go. On the repositories, there would be the filter plugin. Okay. So from here, once you're on this page here, you want to go to releases if you're going this way, or if you've gone directly to releases, you'll just show up here. And you want to look at probably the latest release here. Any sort of information would be here in the comments. And you're going to want to download this deal out. Okay, so when you click to download it, you may get this error. You can say you don't do anything actually, just say keep here. And then once it's downloaded, you want to make sure, actually that's all you need to do is get it downloaded. Once it's downloaded, you'll need to register it. So this happens by using the plugin registration tool. Here I'm using the one for the Xroom Toolbox. If you use the plugin registration tool, it will look very, very similar. You register new assembly. And from here, you want to go and select the actually downloaded assembly here. So right there, boom. So go ahead and select that and say open. These by default should be sandbox and database, but if they're not, go ahead and check those and go ahead and click register plugin. Once you've done that, it'll show up in your list of registered plugins. And you'll need to right click on this and say register new step. Okay. When you do that, you'll need to register two steps, a pre-operation and a post-operation. I've gone through and I've labeled it pre or post here, but you need to type in retrieve multiple here because this is going to happen on the retrieve multiple request. The entity you want it to run against. So you can register against any entity, or it's the entity you're doing the filter for, not the entity you actually have the query on. So if I go back to what I had here, I'm on the account entity, but I'm registering, I want to filter by the contact. So it's a contact entity I need to register it for. So retrieve multiple contact, none's here. These you can default. I've added a pre here just to differentiate. System disabled is the run in user context. Well, it wants this to always run. This will go through any security things. So if they don't normally have access to that field, you may want to change that to run in user's context. But for the most part, you're wanting them to get that information. So system disabled is the correct option there. pre-operation here, synchronous. And then you can put a comment in here, determines if the current query is being used for the filter lookup. So that's the first stage of it. And then you'll have some JSON here to go through and format here. So let me show this to you in a little bit better format here. So you'll need, don't forget your curly braces on the outside here, but you'll need attributes here. That's an array that contains all the attributes you want to use in your lookup name. So by default, contact will have a full name. You don't have to use the actual default name if for some reason you've named something, you've got a different name that you're actually using for the actual name of the entity. You can change that if you'd like. There's a max length there just to make sure that we don't have some weird name that takes over all the screen or whatever. So full name and any of the other attributes you want to include as well. So here I'm using the parent customer ID and the address one, state, or province. Now these all need to be lowercase just to be on the safe side because they're the logical names. You do have the option, max length is optional, so you don't have to include it if you don't want to. The prefix also is optional as well. So what a prefix does, if we go look at the actual query here, look at this. This has a little dash, space dash in front of it. That's the prefix that's being used. Hey, and that only shows up if this value occurs. So you're not going to see extra values in here that aren't actually there. So if I went in and did like this, and I said that's what I want to use, I didn't have this prefix here, that dash would always show up even if that didn't. So if I had it hard-coded that this is the format I want to use, dash, comma, then that would always show up even if there was no straight filled in or no parent customer ID filled in. So that would look kind of weird in those cases because you'd have some empty spaces in here. But so, yeah, so that's why that prefix thing exists. The prefix says, hey, give this prefix if it exists. So if there is no state or province, you won't see the comma. If there is no parent customer ID, you won't see the dash. Okay, so that's all set up. This is the format here. That just says how you're going to format it. This one matches with the first item in this array, second item, and third item. All right, zero indexing because that's the way things go. And this is the standard for the developers out there. This is a standard .NET string formatter. So if you want to add some sort of conditioning format for date times and numbers, you could do whatever you want to do there. And then name attributes. This is the actual thing, the actual name of the entity to override. So you don't always have to do this for the full name, but the plugin itself is set up to only run and only get triggered when it's a actual query that looks exactly like the query that occurs when you do a filter lookup. Okay, so that sets that all up. So you want to copy that and paste it in to the, let's go back to here, to the configuration. You can use the unsecure or the secure, it doesn't matter. Unsecure is what I would recommend because it really doesn't need to be secure. Plus, you would want it to probably do this in dev and propagate it up, put it in a solution, propagate it up between all your environments, yada, yada, yada. So that kind of stuff, you'd want to get that to go with it. If you did the secure config, that would not move with the environments. You'd have to manually add that each and every time. So you have a pre-operation contact, disabled, comment in there if you want. And then you also have a post-operation. So again, same exact thing, retrieve multiple contact, post-operation, and different comment here. This is actually returning the full name. And then from here you go through and same exact value for the configuration here. So if you don't keep these things in sync, they may or may not work. Depends on what changes you've made. Different parts of the plugin needs different settings here. So for the most part, just always put it in sync and you will be safe. If you do happen to have a secure config, that will be used instead of the unsecure config, so just the FYI on that. And I've added a post here just to give it a clean name here. So once you've done that, that's it. It should start working. So now as we go look at this, you see the actual name here and the state. If for some reason, well, we don't need the actual account that this thing's tied to, we can go back and we can remove this one attribute. Okay. Gone. And we need to remove one of these as well. Cool. Update there. And update this one as well. Just copy and paste it from before. Okay. That's done. Now if I go through and look at this, clear that to make sure it does another query. Now we see that it's gone. So it works immediate. There's really no time here. It's not going to be detrimental to your system here. If I look at the actual plugin traces for this, you'll see that they take except for this one, which for some reason decided to take 2 minutes. Something was weird with that. I'll have to talk to Jonas about that because that looks kind of weird because it said it took 49 seconds. 0.049. Sorry. So 49 milliseconds. 78 milliseconds, 31 milliseconds. So these are times that are very, 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 very slow to go through, or not very quick, I'm sorry. Just the FYI for that. That's how it works. That's the cost associated with it, around 15 milliseconds. Very, very small. Nothing to be worried about, I would say. And you get the joy of, not the joy, at least you get the option here of having a whole lot better naming convention when it comes to trying to figure out these duplicate values. And if you wanted to, it could be updated to basically update the name of something if you wanted to update the name of something. So hopefully that is helpful for you. And if it is, please feel free to comment and to let me know, tweet about it, share it with friends. It's something that makes life a lot simpler when you're trying to deal with these filter by lookups. Oh, it also works with this advanced one here. So if I add a row for the, I think it's parent or primary contact. Yeah. So here we go. They are showing up correctly in here as well. So works great that way as well. So it works in both of those situations. So that's my tip of the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you have any issues. I appreciate it, and have a good one.